Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. We're trying a different view here. So you're currently on this like jimmy rigged thing on the back of the hospital bed. So we'll see how this goes. It's better lighting this way. Anyway, we wanted to record a video for newlyweds, giving our best advice for newlyweds. So it's our top 10, not necessarily top 10, just 10 things that we would advise newlyweds to think about or to do or to practice. And then there's one bonus one that I thought about at the end. That's good. You'll see what it is. But we have been married 3 years, so it's not like we have, 20 years experience in marriage, but we do have things that we've learned over the past 3.5 years. 3.5, right? So we wanted to share them with you guys because we've seen people in our lives who just benefit from like what other people have been through in their marriage and their experiences, and just like sharing what we've been through and how it's helped us or what we've done to strengthen our marriage. And I know that there's a lot of people who are newlyweds, and even if you're not a newlywed, this is good for people who have been married 3.5 years, 5 years, 10 years, to start practicing if you're not already, or to get back into. So, do you want to do the first one?
Number one is realize that marriage doesn't solve your problems, rather it magnifies them. So if you, let's say you fight about money and when you're dating, getting married, like, I'll have one bank account, it'll all be better. No, it's just going to make the situation worse. Or if you get jealous, let's say you get jealous of some of the friends your significant other has, getting married isn't going to make it better. You're not going to think, oh well, I'll be married, he'll be married to me, so then he won't matter, I won't be as jealous, or I can trust him more. If you have trust issues when you're dating, getting engaged or married, it's just going to make it worse.
I would say the same thing, but specifically for like women, I think it's really easy for us to think I'm insecure before I'm married, so marriage will help my insecurity. And that's just not true at all. If you are insecure about your body, or you're insecure about who you are or your purpose in life, marriage is not designed to take away that insecurity. It's there to, like, he helps me with my insecurities by pointing me back to God and by reminding me that I'm beautiful and making me feel that way. But if I come into the marriage with insecurities thinking that he is going to solve them for me, or the marriage is going to solve them, it just doesn't work like that. So that's something that you need to talk to God about with beforehand. And you can go into your marriage with insecurities. It's like most people do, but put those on the table for your spouse to know about. Okay, the second one is see your spouse as a priceless gift of God and a priceless child of God. That's been huge for us. When we first got married, actually on our wedding day, the very first thing that both of our vows said, unplanned, were to love God more than we love each other. And it's been difficult, like in the past 3.5 years, to 100% be consistent in that, just because life. But seeing him and changing my perspective from he's just my husband to he is also like a child of God changes the way that I have my relationship with him and the way that we do our relationship, because it's not just him and his life here on earth, it's him and his life after in heaven, and that's like really huge that I get to be a part of that and he gets to be a part of that for me. Number
3 is he wants respect and she wants to be shown love. Yeah, so really when it boils down to it, like most of the time when like if in a relationship and you're arguing or fighting, it comes down to the male not feeling respected and the woman not feeling loved. Maybe that it's not what you think at first, but I think most of the time, or a lot of the times I should say, that's usually what it comes down to. So recognizing that you process things differently. I express emotions differently than she does. I process things differently than she does. So how we process and show emotions is very different, and you have to realize that, and you have to talk about it. If she's concerned that I'm not expressing my emotions enough, or that I'm not processing something, like, or I'm not sad about something as she is, she has to realize that I process things differently, and I may not be as emotional as she might be.
Yeah, I think it's also, just to add on to that, like, you have to understand somebody fully before you can respect them fully. Does that make sense? So, like, I can't respect him fully if I see his lack of emotion as inconsiderate or not sensitive to my emotions. If I feel that way, isn't like he's not emotional and I am, and I take that as like an attack on me, that's not the case, because that's not how he is. It's not what he's trying to do. It's just that he processes emotions differently, and he also knows that I am a sensitive person, and I process my emotions or my feelings or just the way that I do things and think about things is way different. So if I have an emotion that I come to him with that I feel like is valid, and he sees it as invalid and he lets me know that crushes me, because to me it's real. Even if he doesn't agree with it necessarily, like, there are some things that I'm like, need to chill out on, but if it's a real thing that I'm struggling with, like, I don't feel good in my body today, and if his response was just like, well, get over it, which just never has been. Never has been. But I'm saying, if he just leaves it at like, well, you're not, that's not enough for me. I need him to be like, no, you're not, and this is why you're beautiful, or this is why you're blank. And that's how, like, women are, and guys are just like straight up logical and practical. And girls are not like that at all.
Yeah, what'd you say? You said men process things through logic and women process things through emotions. Yeah. I think that was really good.
The fourth one is to establish daily prayer together. So I've said this in a video before, and I've said it on Instagram a couple times, but if you can be physically intimate with your spouse, you should be able to be spiritually intimate. Like, that should be a foundational thing in your marriage. It wasn't for us necessarily. We prayed together, I think, a little bit in the beginning, but we did not make it a thing that we did because we wanted to honor God with our marriage. It was just kind of like here and there when I needed him to, or when he thought about it, or when I thought about it. But since going through this whole thing, we pray together every single day, whether it's just even through like a text message. We do that sometimes. But having a foundation of prayer together and like for each other and also separately is a game changer, because prayer changes things.
And I think it's very important to realize and understand that you're not always going to feel like praying. You know, like when I get off of work, and usually depending on what time I get off of work, because I work second shift, I'll call her on my way home or as soon as I get out, and I'll pray real quick so she can go to bed. There's plenty of times where I'm either stressed out or I'm tired or whatever. I don't really feel like calling and praying, but it's just like choosing to put God, first in your relationship. So like, you hear love is a choice, and that's the same thing for God. Like, you have to choose to love God every day. You have to choose to make that a priority and not be discouraged if you don't feel like praying, because you shouldn't. That's just an opportunity for you to take that, an opportunity for you to show God that like he's number one, and your feelings are not.
Also, to like, don't feel bad if you don't pray every single day together. Like, just make it a habit and make it a consistency thing, because that's like what's most important. It's not like a ritual that you do every day. It's a relationship that you're building together with God. And also, I just want to say to the women, if your spouse does not feel comfortable or they feel like embarrassed, I think it's just harder for some guys if they don't have a strong relationship with Christ. If they're going into a new marriage and they're trying to like build that with you, maybe at first you want them to like be the person who prays, and ultimately that's the goal. He should. But if it's important to you and it's important to him for you to build that relationship with Christ together, don't be afraid to initiate the prayer, like, to begin with. Because there's been sometimes where I've been like, you haven't, and I've been like, hey, let's pray, I'll do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, just encouragement. Don't get mad at your spouse if he doesn't, but encourage him and give him an example that if you're willing to do it, then he will follow. So number 5, I wrote this one. It's have the same compassion for weakness that Christ did. So you are a broken person marrying a broken person, and you're taking your weaknesses into the marriage like together. You don't just automatically, the weaknesses that you had before just go away. They go into you with your marriage, and if you have expectations on the other person of like you're gonna be this perfect person all the time and you're gonna do all these things that I expect you to do whether I've told you to do them or not, is not realistic, and it's also really toxic to your relationship. So Christ looks at weaknesses as like, I am gonna give you grace there. Like, he looks at our weaknesses and doesn't get mad at us for being weak. He says, okay, I recognize your weakness, come to me and I'll show you grace and I'll give you strength. So in a relationship, in a marriage, if I say, hey, I'm feeling weak in this area, or I am struggling with insecurity in some way, which would be something I would struggle with, he's not gonna say, well, like, get over it, that's, just deal with it. He's gonna say, okay, I recognize that as a weakness, and maybe sometimes the things that I do in my insecurity upset him, like how I talk about myself or talk to myself, but he's going to show me grace, and then he's gonna help me remember who my strength comes from. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Number 6 is discover how to love each other well through things like asking questions, how can I pray for you? Like what are you struggling with most right now? I think that's big, and really it comes down to just talking to each other. You can figure out if you truly care and love about your partner, you'll figure out how you can love them better and how you can love them in the way they need to be loved, just by talking to them and just living life with them. As you go through life with somebody, you learn what makes them feel the best, what makes them feel the most loved. So I think just being intentional with trying to figure those things out.
Yeah, and I think, like, to sum that up, it's don't assume that you just automatically know all those person's difficulties and things like that. Like, it's a constant thing that you need to talk about, because something that I maybe had a difficulty of last month is not the same as this month. And so it's just being in constant communication that, like, this is what I need you to help me be strong in this month or whatever. But there's also questions like, what's your biggest difficulty right now? What's something that you constantly fear? What does respect, love, and honor look like to you? And those last 3 are kind of like uncomfortable questions. You don't like it's not really easy to just sit down and be like, hey, tell me what honor looks like for you, because they're hard. They're hard to give a description of. But I think it's important to just have that question on the table to get your mind thinking of, like, what does honor look like to me? And that's especially for men. Men want to be honored. And so just allowing them to know, like, this is something that I want to do for you. I want to honor you. So think about how that looks, like what that looks like for you, and let me know so that I can do that for you.
I think an easy way to phrase that question is like love languages, right? Kind of.
Yeah,
a part of it.
Yeah, I would definitely know your partner's love language and do that. Like, along with that, do your partner's love language. Don't do your own love language to your partner unless it's your partner's love language. Like, his love language is not receiving gifts. Mine is. If I just gave him gifts all the time and expected him to feel the most love that way, you probably would feel loved, but not in the way that you would feel loved if I did something like physical touch, which is his love language. That little smile you just got on your face. Number 7 is get plugged into a Christian community early. So both together and individual. This is also not something that we did at the very beginning of our marriage that we wish we did, but it's been a game changer in our lives now. He has a godly influence in his life that has drastically changed things for you in the way that you have your relationship with God and even me. And I got plugged into Christian community like a year and a half ago with my small group and just being more involved in church and stuff. And so did you, but not in a small group setting. But that has changed so much for us, because if you just have each other and you don't have any other, like, if I don't have women in my life who are helping me grow outside of this, then they're not challenging me to be a better wife to him. I just would be like and I can have conversations with them that are like healthy, and as in, this is what I'm struggling with, or this is what we're struggling with, without going into too much detail, and say, like, how can you guys give me advice, or can you point me to truth to, like, help out the situation, or to, love him better, or whatever, or pray for me, or pray for us. And the same thing has been with him.
8 is recognize generational curses, or something that your family has dealt with in the past that has been like a burden to their marriage, or to the family, I guess, in general. So example would be like gambling or alcoholism. If that runs in your family, and your parents or your grandparents or anybody, whoever raised you or whoever you grew up with, if that runs in your family and that's something that has caused issues in your family, like when you meet somebody, and you see that this person might be, a potential spouse, or let's say it is your spouse now, and you put that out on the table, you pray over it, and at least have open conversation about it. That way it's up in the air, because if it's something that you fear that you might struggle with, then if you just keep bottling in, it's just going to keep coming to the surface until it's implemented into your life. And just, I forgot what I was going to say.
I know what you mean. But it's
before it comes full circle.
Yeah. or keeps becoming something that happens from generation to generation.
Yeah.
Like, you have an ability right now, if your family has a history of infidelity, right? That's right? Infidelity? It's cheating?
I think so.
Okay, if your family has a history of cheating, then it's very, very important to, even if you have not cheated, it's important to put that on the table, because, like, spiritually speaking, the enemy uses that. But also just, like, in real life speaking, it can have a deep effect on you that you might not know about. It can be really deep down and influence you. And so if you just have that conversation with your spouse and see the other person's generational curses as, like, real and a real deal that you need to talk about, that you need to discuss and pray over, the enemy can't have his hands on those things, because they're out in the open and they're known about. So, yeah.
And if you think about it this way, when you start bringing kids into the equation, you don't want those things passed down to your kids. You want it to stop where you're at.
Yeah. It's like everything that you have a issue with in marriage can be led back to a deeper root of something, and a lot of times they can be led back to a deep root from childhood of some sort, and that could be a childhood generational curse, or like something that you went through that your parents also went through that they didn't work through. You know what I mean? It just keeps going and going. So you need to make sure that you're talking about those things. 9 is to prioritize time together. Kind of sounds like, duh, you're newlyweds, we're going to spend time together. But I mean, like, establish something now. Because we didn't do that. We spent a lot of time together when we were newlyweds. But when life started happening and you start getting comfortable in marriage, it's really easy to stop dating, which people warn you about all the time. But for us, when life kind of started getting crazy and he started working way more, what is that? We made it a priority for even just one day a week. We started going to a coffee shop in the mornings for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we would do a devotional together, or just have conversation like about things that aren't work, or things that aren't like things that stress us out, just like conversations that we really like were healthy and positive. And it was so healthy for us, because if you go your whole week without having intentional time set aside for each other, whether you have kids or not, you have to have that time. And you can do one day a week. You can be selfish with one day a week for 1 to 2 hours and just have time together. It's so important.
Yeah, and I think it's important. Intentional oftentimes comes with some sort of sacrifice. So like we were spending a lot of time together when we first got married, because we had a lot better schedule. We had easy schedules, and it was just, we always, not always were together, but we were together a lot. Like now, when we're when I started working a lot, working 65 hours a week, I would have to not go to the gym one morning, right? So I would just say, okay, like, I need to take, the 2 hours to skip a gym one day or whatever and spend time with you. And I think you decide between each other, what's the right amount of sacrifice for the things that you need to do throughout the week so you can get that time together.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be time if you make time.
Yeah. We didn't have time, and yet we made that 1 to 2 hours on the morning that day that we did it. And it was like we looked forward to it every single week. That we knew on Thursdays, it was usually Thursdays, right? Thursdays we knew we were going to get up, we were going to have breakfast, do our morning routine, and we were going to go to a coffee shop and do a devotional. All right.
Number 10, pay off debt. Yeah. So.
Or at least think about it.
Yeah. So that's something that this past year we did Financial Peace University with Dave Ramsey. And it really just opened our eyes to how to better pay off debt and like the importance of it and how important it is to get a plan together. You hear all the stories in there. They say, I paid off $190,000 in debt in 2 years and whatnot. But whether that's possible for you or not, to get a plan together and to get on the same page saying, okay, we're going to have a budget. We're going to stick to this budget.
Yeah, it's not just paying off debt.
Yeah.
It's getting your money right.
You're right, getting your money right. Yeah, not just paying off debt, but sticking to a budget and being on the same page with money. So many things will iron itself out within your life because you're on the same page financially. You're stewarding your money that in a way that's pleasing to God. You're giving, you're tithing.
Yeah, two things that I would say is that it's you learn how to steward your money together, not own it. So there's a huge difference there. And we were not good at this at the beginning of our marriage. We didn't have conversations about money, and until we did Financial Peace, had really not great conversations about money. It was very stressful and just unhealthy and not good. And then we started doing Financial Peace, and even though we haven't paid off a whole bunch of debt yet, we started to better communicate about money, and it was started to become healthy, and we were excited to do that. And yeah, it's just, don't put that off. Please don't put that off. It's so important.
And you don't have to, in order to argue about money, it doesn't always have to be you're arguing because you don't know if you're going to be able to pay your bills this month or not. It could just be how you approach each other about certain topics or certain situations, or hey, why are you spending this money? Why are you doing this? Or just hey, I'm gonna go spend this. I'm gonna go and out with my friends tonight. Well, we don't have enough money to do that. Plus, go on a date night or something. It just doesn't mean you're gonna run out of money and you might be on the street. You can't pay your bills or whatever. It could just be a number of things.
Yeah, it just, you both know where your money's coming from and you both know where your money's going, and there's nothing dictatorship about that. Dictatorship. You know what I'm trying to say. I don't have to ask him permission to spend money, but I do have to let him know and say, hey, this is what I would like to spend money on. Do we have the funds for this? Or where would I take this money from? So yeah, the bonus one is to don't compare your marriage to others. If you're going to compare your marriage to anyone, it should be Jesus and the church. You compare your marriage to people on Instagram or us or other people in your life, you will have a false standard of what it should look like. So
yeah.
I just can't stress that enough, that you, as long as you are comparing your marriage to somebody else, you will always find a fault in your spouse or fault in you or fault in your marriage. That is not necessarily a fault. It's just something worldly that we've decided to call healthy marriage, and maybe it's not. Marriage is supposed to make you happy. Not really. That's a whole nother video that I could go into. But anyway, that is my bonus one for you guys. So if you liked this video and you thought it was helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and remember to subscribe if you want to see us do more marriage videos like this. Comment some topics down below. We love talking about marriage. Alright guys, remember to love God, love yourself, and love people, and we will see you in the next one.